Hey everyone, Caldari Jones here. Tonight I want to give you a walkthrough of where I'm at with the chaotic Dark Ikitursa in 2025. This is after the trig weapon nerf and after I kind of walked away from the fit for a bit. I have started running it in T5 again, and I'm going to give you a baseline fit here, and I'm going to walk you through how I would get started if you wanted to invest in a Dark Ikitursa, and I'll also compare it with what I'm running essentially to get the power grid that we need to run these smart bombs that I have. Before I really talk about the fit though, I'm going to go into, why would you run a Dark Ikitursa? And the answer really is you like the fit, you like the ship really, and you want to fly a trig ship in the Abyss. It will be more expensive than most T5 runners. There is a slight benefit for that other than, it's just kind of neat. It will average 5 full runs an hour, and if you have shipyards in there, you can go up as high as 6 and potentially even 7. So there you do get a payout for that investment. But yeah, if you are still working on a budget or still learning T5, definitely look at maybe the Munin, the Cerberus, or even the Sacrilege. They're going to get 4 runs per hour. It's going to be good ISK while you figure out what exactly you want to do in high tier abyssals. For those of you who may not know me and what I try to do in Abyssal Lurkers, I'm always looking to promote a relatively cheap baseline and then coach people on what they need to do to fit within their budget and what they're looking to get out of the game. So while this fit will be expensive, it's still fairly reasonable, I think, for what you're getting out of it. And I'm never really just going to throw ISK at a fit because there's definitely some diminishing returns, and I'll talk through my decision-making process from the baseline compared to what I'm running on screen here. Real quick, I do want to talk through the room that is on screen right now. This is actually a Drek Kiki room. If you don't know, Drekovacs have a high amount of remote reps. This is primarily a gun DPS room for us. What you see is I dunk the anchoring Damavik right at the start so that I can regain my mobility through my micro warp drive, because if I'm mobile, that means I can force occult on these Drekovacs, which will help me reduce this room time to below 5 minutes. If I were to sit here and be caught and have to run Baryon or even Mystic, you'd be looking at a 5-minute plus room. So it's still doable, but you would need to be fighting for that time back, because any room where you're just mainly stuck with a gun and you have limited smart bomb support, you will definitely feel that trig weapon nerf. So yeah, really what you see on screen is I'm able to maintain the very short range distance. I have a tracking pylon to benefit from, and I'm just going to hit these Drekovacs with occult, and then by the time they drop, the Kikimora should be getting quite low and the Damavik will mostly die to the smart bomb. You won't see the dramatic, clearing the entire room with the smart bomb here, but it does help counteract with all of the remote reps going out. What I'm running in the current iteration of the Dark Iki for T5 is a double entropic sync and a lows. The baseline fit runs a reactor control unit just to give you a lot of power grid back. With my mutations, I'm actually running a power diag, mainly because it is giving me power grid, but it's also giving me a good bit of cap. So if you ever are about 6% cap over, definitely run 6% power grid over. I run a PDS because it'll give you a good bit of cap. As always, I'm running a single A-type armor repper. Since we run a single repper, you want to make that as nice as possible. Right now I am running A-type coatings for resists. Mainly one reason to get CPU back, and then 2, they're cheap. You could run B-types here of membranes. It would be slightly better, but you're talking about 60, 70 more CPU, which depending on the mutations that you do, you may not have. And then at the end of May with the Legion expansion, this tank will be even stronger. So I definitely will stay with the coatings, or really you could probably dial back the cost a little bit and go maybe with B-type coatings, or if you have CPU to play with, B-type or C-type membranes, seeing where the cost lines up for them. We definitely don't need a lot of tank. This is actually running more tank than my previous T5 Ikitursa, where it was running a micro warp drive even when we did not have the hack bonus. But now we are running the micro warp drive again, because if you remember on my Dark Ikitursa Streamlit site, I said if the hack nerf ever gets reverted to where they get the Sig Bloom bonus again for micro warp drives, I would immediately go back to the micro warp drive, and that is exactly what I did. The difference now is I'm definitely not running a web these days. I'm just going to run a tracking disruptor. I primarily am running that so that I can ramp on Karen with either Mystic or Mezzan and not really have to chase her. For the rest of the mid slots, I'm going to run a large and medium cap battery. Definitely run two kinds of cap batteries based on what you can fit. You could probably get away with the high resist mutated small battery. What's nice about the medium small batteries is they're actually very cheap to roll, so definitely roll them yourself and just see what you get. For the high slots with the disintegrator, always default on the faction Veli's version. You can go with the officer gun, which will give you 100 power grid back, which for us, might be exactly what you need and is actually what I'm running on screen. I actually am not a huge fan of the officer gun because yes, you do have higher base damage, but you have lower range. So yeah, you might be getting away with a higher base damage, but you might actually be having to run Mystic more, so your higher base damage is actually coming with a 25% tracking penalty. So definitely do not just jump into the officer gun. I'm still kind of on the fence about it. If I were to continue to mutate my fit, because again, I am trying to keep it on a budget, I will immediately go back to the Velis. For the Smart Bomb, we want to take advantage of the Smart Bomb tier side, and we're going to run Plasma Smart Bombs. That will give us more range compared to the EMPs, which we used to use as a baseline. And what's nice is the Plasma Smart Bombs will actually give a more favorable damage type against Triglavian. So more range, better damage type, slightly lower overall damage, but for the most part with what we're running here with the large, medium, and small, it will be more than enough. As always, you don't necessarily need to dump all of your DPS into the gun or all of the DPS into your smart bombs, because you're always going to have, typically you're going to have gun targets and smart bomb targets. And you really don't need to be waiting around, you've killed all your smart bomb targets and now your gun's doing damage, or if you've killed all your gun targets but you're still waiting for your smart bomb damage. You can definitely balance your fit and your budget that way to make sure that you're keeping pace with yourself. As always, I value range on smart bombs above all else. Because it doesn't matter what damage type you have, and if it's a favorable resist, if they're outside of range, then you're doing 0 damage. That's really the main reason why I'm going with the plasma smart bombs these days. But really, if you have a smart bomb out past 8 kilometers, that's going to give you a lot of value. It puts Ephialtes in 50% weather back in range. In a single large smart bomb, hitting Ephies will kill the spawn very efficiently. So definitely don't bend over backwards to get beyond 8 kilometers. You can mutate your mediums to get past 8 kilometers, which is definitely a nice boost. But definitely don't break your fit trying to get everything max range, high DPS. If you're having difficulty with mutations, or you do want to even go cheaper, or maybe you want to go cheaper on your implants or cheaper with your reactor control, or go back to a PDS, you could just use the traditional large smart bomb and then double smalls. That would even let you get triple sync back on there as well. I have tried the triple sync setup with the large and double small. I think it's just a little bit less, a little bit slower on your average runtime, because while having a triple sync is nice for your gun DPS, the reality is most targets are going to be within smart bomb range, and that is damage that did not take a trig weapon nerf, and it's also competing against a sync that is on its 3rd stacking penalty. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that triple sync, you could add even more tank. What I would do here is I would add a reactive armor hardener. It's a lot of value for a very cheap module. If you don't like seeing your tank move at all, that might be the right play for you. So yeah, while you want 8 kilometers, I definitely wouldn't run a large under 7,500 meters. And really, if you can get a medium out to at least 7,500 meters or 7,600 meters, it's going to be a nice addition to your fit. For the implants, this is really determined by the pilot's budget. I'm running high grade Asklepians. As you can see here, no Omega, so it's not the full cost of the fit. I had high grades from my old Dark Ikis. Really, you could probably get away with mid grades here just based on your comfort level. And then you're going to run a power grid management implant in slot 6. This is a lot of power grid. Again, if you decide to go big on mutations or running an officer gun, you could drop this and run the Omega implant if you want more tank. And the other implants, they're definitely nice to have, but really at our budget, you probably don't need to spend this money. But my logic typically is if I'm going to do a fit that is expensive, I am going to put decent implants on it, because I mean, either do it or don't go halfway in on a fancy fit. As far as which grade Asklepian setup to run, really, with the EHP per second that we have here, we're already plenty fine in most rooms. And honestly, you'll see the theme among most of my fits where I value EHP and resist significantly more than EHP per second, because remember, if you are putting all of your tank in your repair, then really that means you are converting cap to tank, and this is a very cap intensive fit. And because we want to sit still in most spawns, we are taking most newts right to the face. So having a nice buffer is just great, because you're not having to juggle, oh, I must rep or I die. You can watch in a lot of these spawns, my tank really is just not moving. And honestly, a lot of spawns, you don't even need to run your repper. Again, like most things, that's going to be personal preference. I've spent probably more time in high tier in the Dark Ikitursa than any other fits, so I'm comfortable with all of these spawns, and I have a pretty good idea of how my tank is going to react. You should see it later in this set. A Karen wrecking is maybe about 50% of our armor, and an Overmind wrecking is about 40%. So really, you could, if you really wanted to, you could ignore wrecking and be okay, or if you're very unlucky, eat double wrecking. I mean, really, if you take a wrecking shot, you should be moving. As always, if you take significant damage in dark, just light your micro rep drive and move, because the dark weather is going to protect you. For drugs, I'm running standard exile here and synth frentics. Honestly, with this fit, you really should just double roll standard exile and standard frentics. I have been testing out what synth frentics feels like, and having a good bit of experience in how to fly, I can actually make synth frentics work. So if you don't want to double roll, that's definitely an option. If you're running Vellies, that's definitely an option. Because yes, double rolling is never fun, but just know that if you are learning and you find yourself having difficulty maintaining Baryon or Occult, maybe the right call is you double roll standards until you get the hang of it. For the hard shell, that's definitely not required. You could run Pyro. Hard shell is just cheap. Even the lower levels of Pyro is cheap. So again, expensive fit, cheap drugs, just get a nice little boost there. The rest of the fit really is not going to change. You're always going to have double Ancel rigs for power grid. And then for drones, you just want Navy Vespas, because you can keep them out under tower pressure. Anytime you have probably Overmind, Karen, Deep Watchers, you want to make sure you're taking advantage of your drone DPS, as long as it's not interfering with your smart bomb. So, you never want to have to turn off smart bombs because you're worried you're going to kill your drones. But the other thing is, if you send your drones after a distant target, there's a good chance some of your smart bomb targets are going to follow them, and you don't want that either. So if I have any risk of losing smart bomb uptime on a target, I just keep the drones in the bay. Along those same lines, that's also why you don't really see me going for side nodes. I'm not going to send a drone out and risk, 3 FEs chasing it and me just having to kill 3 more FEs. We're going through rooms fairly quickly, and I mainly just want to get the biocaches because it is decent ISK, and really for the playtime that I have available, I'm more interested in seeing more rooms versus getting more ISK out of each room. With our current average runtime in T5, we're below 10 minutes, so if getting more ISK per room is important to you, you definitely have more than enough time to play around with that. One thing that I want to touch on back in the mid slots that we talked about briefly with Karen is the tracking disruptor. We're going to run an optimal range script in this tracking disruptor, because really what it is think about it as amplifying the dark weather penalty against a single target. So we're going to be able to push Karen closer to us and get a mystic ramp. If there's a lot of confusers in the room, then you will do a mezzan ramp instead. The difference is if you do a mystic ramp on Karen, the support crew will probably die around the same time that she dies. If you do a mezzan ramp, the support crew will die, and then she'll be alive for about another 30 seconds. But even with the mezzan ramp and Karen, doing it that way, it's still a very quick room. It's like a 3.5 minute Karen room, which is great compared to a lot of other setups at T5. For when you're not applying it against, big targets like Karen or Overmind, what you can do is you can force enemies closer to you, usually within your occult range. So if I have, say, Lucid Newt cruisers on me, I will start a Mystic or Baryon ramp on one, and then I will place the TD on the second target. That second target will move in, I will kill it with Occult, and then I will alternate as I go down the cruiser list just to make sure that, I'm not just spending time waiting for ships to boat into Occult range on me. I'd rather be shooting Baryon versus, waiting around for targets that are going to have to be killed with the gun. The last thing to really talk about with this fit is how you're going to meet the power grid requirements. The baseline fit on screen is over by about 2.5% power grid. There's a few easy answers just based on your budget. Again, you can run the reactor control unit. I'm running the PDS in this video right here. Reactor control unit is more than fine. You just need to be more cognizant of your cap. If you have everything running in PyFit, it looks like we don't have a lot of cap, but as you can see here, I'm really not running the micro warp drive much. I'm over repping my armor repper. And there's even times where, you may not be getting full value out of your small and medium smart bombs, so you could definitely turn them off. So yeah, reactor control is definitely fine. It's a lot of power grid, so if you're having issues, definitely make that change first. And then the first mutation that you want to do is your large smart bomb, because you can get 200 power grid back there. Honestly, if you're running an 800 power grid large smart bomb, you may not have any power grid concerns, and you can start going really cheap elsewhere. Alternatively, like I mentioned, you could run the officer gun. It's about 100 power grid, which is a lot of power grid and does solve a lot of problems. But again, it's a very expensive gun, and I would say it's a side grade at best as far as what it does elsewhere on the fit. I would much rather, honestly, mutate a bunch of modules than run the Zoria gun. Not to mention, if the Dark Iki were to actually be popular again, there's not a lot of officer modules out there, and I honestly don't like promoting a fit that needs an officer module, whereas if the market's so small, I just don't want to put people in a bind thinking they must have that. You could also run a 6% power grid implant. It's definitely more expensive than the 5% by a good bit, but it's still significantly cheaper than really any of the Asklepian Omegas. So overall, it's not a terrible implant choice. But yeah, really what I would start doing is just see if there's any good rolls on the market, or maybe do some rolls yourself to see where you can scrape back power grid and CPU. If you start going over on CPU, just try to find a version of the fit that works for you without really crushing your budget. And again, honestly, you could just drop the medium smart bomb, and that's going to solve a lot of problems right there too. That pretty much covers the fit, so let's go ahead and start talking about what we're seeing on screen here. This is a 50% dark room, so Karen naturally wants to orbit us at about 30 kilometers. I'm going to put the tracking disruptor on her, and she's going to float it around 21. This spawn had 2 confusers and about, I think, 6 or 7 webs at the start, so I just went in with a mezzan rather than trying to force a mystic, because I'd rather just get started on Karen versus having to start with those confusers first. What you did see me do about a minute ago is I was watching the health on the web Effes, because as soon as the web Effes die, your ship is actually going to lurch forward, and if you're playing with Karen right at the edge of your optimal range, you don't want to accidentally reset her, late into your ramp, because you'll be fine on time. It will just feel terrible. So typically what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep my speed around 80. I've noticed that if you're moving at all, Karen's probably not going to hit you. So once I saw that the webs were about to die, I was hovering over my speed. And when the webs drop, I just set it to about 80, because it's enough so that she doesn't hit me and I can not reset my ramp, which would just suck. Here is a 50% shipyard, which is definitely going to contribute to us getting 6 runs for this set of drugs. Really, at the end of the set, we have 9 minutes left over, and with an average just under 10 minutes, we honestly probably could have done a 7th run, but I mean, 6 runs is pretty good. I'm not going to be greedy and try to force a 7th run here. What you see me doing in this shipyard is, one, I'm seeing, are there a lot of starvings? Are there a lot of blindings? I'm going to go just to the left of the gate, drop the MTU at the gate. I'm looking for the boundary here while also getting close enough. I need about 57 kilometers to get the drones on this cache. And then once they go right there, I'm going to go to the boundary and I'm just going to fly behind this construct. The Leshaks are going to try to approach me, and honestly, I believe some of them actually get stuck on that building. And then by the time I get around this room to about the, if the shipyard is 12 o'clock when you first come in, I'm going to leave this wall at about 9 o'clock and I'm going to approach the MTU. So you can see me panning the camera back and forth here. I'm trying to get an idea of how close the wreck is to the MTU. Now, I wish I had a good measurement for how close it should be, but I'm not doing trigonometry here. I'm just looking at, I'm pretty sure that's good. So I'm going to just start approaching this MTU. I swapped to this renewing because I'm honestly curious if they're actually getting stuck on that structure. So we're just going to make a beeline for this MTU. If you're running an afterburner fit, this room will be a little bit slower. And what you want to do in this final approach is you're going to overheat your afterburner so that you get past these Leshaks. And if you clip their range, you're not staying in there super long. What I'm doing with this micro warp drive is right when I get to about 20 kilometers, I want to decycle this micro warp drive and stop my ship and coast in. If you're getting used to the micro warp drive Iki, remember you're going about over 2,700 meters per second in dark, but you turn like a bus. You definitely don't want to hit this MTU going full speed because you're going to go onto the other side of that gate and you're honestly going to burn probably 30 seconds just slow boating back. So learn your momentum and learn how to coast into this. You can see here I still slow boated probably 4 kilometers. It's a small optimization, but if you love a fit like I love this one, you're looking to make those gains. Okay, new run, and honestly I was really happy to get this spawn in this set because this is a 50% full Leshak room with a lot of blindings, and we get it in the first run, so we do not get to benefit from the invuln period here where we could start right on top of this gate. And honestly, this is the reason that we run the MWD. Similar to where we're mainly running the tracking disruptor for Karen, we're running the MWD for this room because as you see this room play out, we will end up having to cover a lot of ground, and honestly with an afterburner, you're just killing a lot of time doing nothing. So I get in here, really if I wanted to be serious about it, I would have overheated that micro warp drive for a cycle. I'm going to get in here, try to stay on top of these renewings, kill them with a cult, put drones on one of the blindings, and I'm pretty much going to ignore that blinding. Really, if you want to be optimal, I need to zoom out here and look at where everything is positioned because you see my drones are next to 2 blindings. And then I believe I'm with the strikings here, and then, 1 blinding, maybe 2 blindings. You can put the tracking disruptor on the strikings. I believe they come closer. If there was a tangling here, you typically want to kill the tangling Leshaks last because they will follow you. They want to stay within their 15 kilometer web range. So if you have a lot of distance to cover, what you can do is just do a slower, mystic ramp on a tangling as you drag it around to move between what is probably a blinding or a starving Leshak. So as we kill this striking here, we should have one more. No, we're actually already far away from these blindings. So if you look at these blindings here, we've got 3 blindings left. Our drones are on 1 that's 30 kilometers away. It's low, but those drones are going to take a while, just considering that there is remote rep on the field. So now I'm looking at where am I going to go next. I'm going to go up to this, this blinding out here, and you'll see as I approach this, I'm going to be about 40 kilometers away from the gate. I'm going to be about 45 kilometers away from the blindings. So really with an afterburner here, you'd be looking at probably 35 seconds where I would be shooting nothing. And it takes a room that is, while this is a slower room for us, it's still very manageable with a micro warp drive, where if you're in an afterburner, you better be overheating your afterburner and deciding if it's worth meson ramping and building a very efficient path between these Leshaks. It's honestly a great example of a room where, I could show you all these rooms where the smart bombs are doing all the heavy lift and the Dark Icky looks very easy, but being able to solve these rooms is how you earn the ability to run the Dark Icky efficiently and safely. Pretty much the only element that would have made this spawn worse would be if they were starting in a speed cloud. Really, if you have that situation, you want to use that speed cloud to get between targets, but similar with the MWD itself, you need to learn how your momentum works within that speed cloud, and obviously be very careful putting an MWD Icky into a speed cloud. AB, you're definitely going to be fine. Just make sure you're anchoring on something with a micro warp drive. What you ultimately see me doing here is I don't want to completely overcommit on one of these blindings with getting into occult range. So I'm just going to start mezzanine ramp on one. I'm going to start moving towards the other. By the time this mystic ramp kills this blinding, I'm going to single cycle the other blinding, and I'm just going to go to the gate. Whereas, if this was an afterburner, I'd be having to slow boat back probably 4 kilometers now before I could get mezzanine on here. And then I've got probably 40 more seconds to get back to the gate in an afterburner, whereas here it's going to be significantly faster. What you see me do here at the end of the room is I'm loading mystics to start, because as I'm floating into these new rooms, I can typically dunk something like a Damavik. If you have the range, especially on something like the bellies, you want to do Baryon instead so you can use the better tracking. I am testing out the officer gun here. I can't say it enough. I'm not really a fan of the officer gun because I'm going to use Mystic, because as the Damavik slingshots around me, he's probably going to reset my Baryon. And anytime if you're trying to figure out what ammo to use, if you ever get reset, it was the wrong ammo, go with a higher range ammo. This is a Rodiva rogue drone room, fairly straightforward room. I'm just going to go up to the cache here. When you're making this approach, you always want to look at where the cache is relative to the gate, because you don't want to get within smart bomb range. And there's no scrams here, no webs, so it's an easy fix. But if there were 7 webs here and 4 scrams, if you float into 7-kilometer range of that gate, it's really going to be a minute or so before you are able to activate your large smart bomb. And again, all of these rooms are very fast, so you're going to live that. It is just not going to feel good. So Rodivas can be kind of unpredictable in how they fly, similar to Harrowing Vadmax, and especially Harrowing Villa Vadmax. So rather than try to force a cult, I'm just going to go with Baryon. If I wanted to force a cult here, I would approach the renewing or set a very close range, keep it range. But again, you're not very agile, so you want to make sure that you're not slingshotting past. But since there is still a group of targets here, I want to get smart bomb damage going. And if I'm chasing a Rodiva around, I might clip the gate and turn off my smart bombs. There's also a speed cloud in the background. I don't want to go anywhere near that. Anytime you touch a speed cloud in dark, you're probably just burning minutes because of it. And then once everything else is dead here, I am just going to go ahead and try to force this occult on the Rodiva. You can also see just how strong these reps from the Rodivas are, because it's able to keep these drones alive under smart bomb pressure. This Rodiva is actually moving fairly predictably, so I can kind of just sit here and get an occult rep on it. I don't want to go too close to the gate yet. Really, it's a single frigate, no webs, no scrams. You could very easily slingshot it, but as you can see, I just single cycle Tetri on it when it's dead, and I go to gate. Same deal, nothing fancy here. We're going to kill the Rodivas and then let the smart bombs kill the rogue drones. While we're doing this room, I'll talk a little bit about why I'm running T5 and not T6, especially for the budget that some pilots might put into this fit. Really, it's a personal choice. Dark T6 is way more expensive these days, and I have significantly less playtime than I did when the Dark Ikitursa was new. So I can run, 5 T5 darks consistently per hour at about, we'll just say 20 mil per filament, whereas each filament for dark is probably going to run me 40 to 50, and I'm only going to run probably 4, maybe 5. So just in operating costs alone, I mean, I'm almost, at T6 numbers once you look at how much it would cost me to run T6, not even talking about what you're going to put into the fit, compared to, what I'm pulling out of T5 per set of drugs. And that's honestly what matters. I mean, we can pick a bunch of different stats that, that sounds good for a video or a thumbnail, but at the end of the day, what really matters is how many runs you're getting per set of drugs and what you're comfortable with running as your drugs are about to expire. I personally, I'm not really going to risk a fit that I care about, just because I wanted to try to get another run in a set of drugs. And then, sometimes I'm just going to risk it just because it's a game and it's fun. But usually if I'm below my average time left, I'm not going to risk it. If you wanted to speed this room up, you would start trying to force a cult here, and I did just swap. Really, I'm still sitting still. I'm going to just move without Micro Warp Drive on. If I turned it on, I might risk resetting. We're still doing more than fine on time. I mean, it's a question of how much effort you want to put into these rooms. There's definitely a balance of, having a nice challenging fit, and then, the other end of the spectrum is, well, this is just tedious to play, and I want a challenging fit, but I don't want it to be tedious. Okay, another new run here. This is a Vila, Damavik, and Vedmak room. Fairly straightforward. We're just going to Baryon ramp these Herring Vila Vedmaks because they can be very unpredictable in how they move. They're probably going to reset your occult. There's also plenty of Damaviks, so we really want to sit still, make sure that the Damaviks are eating the large, medium, and small smart bomb. I'm looking around. I'm trying to figure out where this speed cloud is because I definitely don't want to be anywhere near it because we're just going to start slingshotting Damaviks out, and even worse, slingshotting the Vedmaks out. But overall, I mean, it's similar to the Rodiva room. I'm just going to... Actually, this is a Mystic ramp, probably because I was starting on this Vedmak first as it's figuring out what it wants to do around me as I'm setting up on this biocache. The next one should be Baryon. Yeah, especially without a tracking pylon here to give us a nice little tracking boost. But you're really going to see here what I'm saying about, we have 3 Vedmaks to kill, and what is that? We'll say 8 or 9 Damaviks. I don't want to kill the Vedmaks and then start killing the Damaviks with the gun because my gun is not optimized to kill frigs. I'm not really wanting to move around. I'm not running a web, not running an afterburner, and there's 2 scrams here. I mean, I don't want to kill the Damaviks, which I am going to end up killing the Damaviks first, and then I just kind of had to wait here and kill these Vedmaks with Mystic Baryon, and you could see I did reset the Baryon there as he slingshot around because he's just flying around like a madman. So I went back to the Mystic, and it's a good example where if I just run the Veli's gun, I probably would have maintained the Baryon there. Alternatively, what you could do here is I have a manual orbit set up at, I guess an automatic orbit set up at 12 kilometers. You could just do a no prop orbit around this gate at 12 kilometers. It's going to ensure your smart bombs are running and not going to get shut off, and it will help a little bit with our tracking. But because I can't really tell where the speed cloud is, I would rather just sit here and just accept a little bit slower clear time rather than potentially sending these already fast Vedmaks through a speed cloud, not to mention me through a speed cloud. yeah, this run was honestly just a lot of Damavix Vedmax. They're all going to play fairly similar. I'm just going to let it roll so you can kind of see how I work the rooms. It's really not a fair representation of the Dark Ikitursa because, I mean, these are easy rooms, and I definitely don't want to only be showing rooms where you really get to sit still and honestly not put a whole lot of thought into it. I like this video format a little bit better just because I can be a little bit more organic in how I'm kind of talking through these clips. I don't like doing the text over videos because I think just doing the voiceover is a little bit nicer, but I definitely don't want to kind of wrap around the axle, making sure I have a perfectly scripted overview of every room. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably maintain this format, and then as people request rooms or I have a good room, I'll just do maybe a single room or a single run set and just do a voiceover. And I mean, stuff like that. I mean, if there's ever something you want, you can always just hit me up in the comments below or in Abyssal Lurkers or in game, and I can definitely pull from my clips to see something that you might feel is important. In this last room, I actually had my small smart bomb turned off for a bit, but you're going to see here, you know, pretty close to what you would really like to happen. This final Vedmax is going to drop right around the time that these Damavix drop. Rogue drone room, very straightforward. If you don't know, sometimes when you kill these rogue drones, they will stop moving, and what we definitely don't want to do is kill one and then float out of smart bomb range in front of them. I mean, this is going to be a fast room no matter what, but if you're trying to be very fast with this room, we're going to go to this biocache, we're going to try to coast in. We want this pack to set up around us so that we can kill them and make sure that they're all in range. You should see me try to identify frigs here that might be on the outset missing some of the smart bombs, and I'm just going to gun them down because, you know, I have nothing else to shoot. Something you do want to pay attention to here is if there are a bunch of strike lance rogue drones, or even, you know, these are the frigs, or especially if they're the battle cruisers, just be ready to move if you just start taking a lot of damage, because kinetic is your hull. If you have a reactive armor hardener, obviously that's less of an issue as the room goes on. But yeah, just always be watching your damage intake. For the most part, you're not going to take a lot of damage in darks, but if you do actually start taking damage, you need to figure out why and react accordingly. Okay, last run of this set. Whenever I'm starting these rooms here, obviously I'm going to turn on the tank, turn on the smart bombs. It might be wasting cap, but I like to just get set up before I really start thinking about other things like cap management. I know I'm going to be okay for a little bit. Always check the weather percentage in these runs. I mean, especially in the Dark Iki, because it will change the ammo type that we use and how we're going to fly. And really what's going to be nice about this room is you're going to see what I'm talking about with alternating the tracking disruptor, so we can get occult on this sentinel. And then I should swap back and forth between occult and probably mystic. Yeah, mystic, especially with this tracking pylon here. As we work through all of these cruisers, and you can see we have 4 gun targets here, and it's still going to be a fairly fast room. I've done a full cruiser room like this, and it's still decently fast. You can also see just kind of how little damage the smart bombs are going to do at about 8 kilometers. I mean, definitely nice to have. It helps with the R, but it's not game breaking. This Sentinel with the turret disruptor actually moved in fairly quickly, so honestly what I should have done is just gone ahead and done an occult swap here, but I had started the Baryon and did not want to swap over. These frigates are kind of erratic, and they're kind of floating outside of my smart bomb range to take consistent damage, but again, I still have another cruiser to kill, so I'm not really worried about it at the moment. And again, it's still a really fast room. Yep, rogue drone frigs. We're just really making sure that this is a fast 6 set of runs, fairly straightforward, nothing fancy here. There are more strike lances in this spawn. I'm running the large, medium, and small combo, so this pack could do a decent bit of damage. It's 50%. You're seeing my tank actually move here, but I just have so much smart bomb damage on the field that by the time they really truly make a dent, they're just gonna die. And then the other thing you saw there is I put a mezzan on the reppers. The field weavers usually come into the smart bomb range, but the plate forgers, sometimes they'll just hang out, honestly, right outside of mezzan range, which can be very annoying. Obviously, you can chase them with a micro warp drive, but if they're going to give me range, I'm just going to do the mezzan so that as they decide where they're going to fly, I can just slowly whittle them down. Okay, last room. You can see me checking my drug duration there to figure out if I really want to do a 7th run here. It's kind of on the fence, and then I got that drone frig room. But here we are going to get a fairly straightforward Karen room. This is a 50% weather. There's no webs here. There's no confusers. So what we're going to do is we're going to get up close. I could use the invuln period here, but ultimately I don't want to be on the gate. And with a micro warp drive, if you use the full invuln period, you will be on the gate. I'm going to bounce off this cache, but typically once I get close to this cache, I'm going to click behind me because I just do not want to be near that gate. I'm going to get the tracking disruptor onto Karen and start the mystic ramp, and you should see the difference here. Whereas early in this video, you saw me do a late mezzan ramp on Karen with confusers. Now I'm going to do a mystic ramp right away. You're going to see that these FEs are going to die right around the same time. I will say that some of the times where I really notice that Karen is actually doing damage is when I have a lot of illuminators in the spawn, so I am being fairly cautious here. I'm going to loot this can, and then I should set my speed low just to make sure that I don't reset her. If you don't have any confusers in the room and you're doing a mystic, you do have a little bit more wiggle room, especially compared to what we were doing in like T6 Dark with Mezzan and Strong Frontex, where you'd have a buffer about like 100 or a few meters. Yeah, that's the video. That's where I'm at with the Ikitursa in 2025. Still my favorite fit by far. I've been running the Munin a lot, but while the Munin is a great ship, this has always been my passion project, and I'll keep putting money into it. Probably lose with this one eventually just because I like to fly a little bit aggressively and see what it really can take. If I have any updates on the fit, I'll probably post it in Lurkers. I'm not sure if I'll do another video. I typically don't do videos often, but if there's a major change, I'll make an update. And as always, if you like this format, or if you want to see specific rooms or have questions about the fit, you can hit me up in the comments. You're also welcome to just hit me up in Lurkers. You can email me in game. I just like talking about the fit and really just like talking about the Abyss in general. But yeah, Effie's just died. Karen just died. Fairly easy set. There's almost exactly 9 minutes left on our exile by the time we get to this gate here. Really, you probably could have done a 7th run here if you wanted to be greedy, but I decided to call it a day.